In the last section we talked about how shutter speed and apertures can be used to create expressive compositions. In this section we'll look at how vital it is to pay attention to camera location and positioning. It's impossible to overstate the importance of just moving your body. So often on my workshops I'll suggest coming in a little closer to the scene. The first thought is to reach for their zoom. Since when did photography become a stationary sport, right? Move your body, get closer. With the advent of better zooms, we have all become a little more lazy. As we saw in Section 5 though, the use of different lenses can really change the look and feel of the images. The same is true of camera positioning. Just simply zooming in is a different photograph. So let's take a look at this arched entryway for a demonstration. I've included from the top of the arch to the bottom of the stairs. In the background you can see a bit of the sign that advertises the Monte Carlo Hotel. Well, let's suppose I don't want to show the hotel sign. I could just zoom in. This would certainly alleviate the problem, but it would really change my composition. Instead, by moving closer and readjusting my focal length to get the same composition, the top of the back of the arch is now obscuring the sign. No camera tricks, no lens tricks, simply moving your feet. It's very common for us to miss these subtleties in our scenes. We have to train ourselves to look at the relationship between the subjects and imagine how they would change as we change our viewpoint. Or even better, move your feet and watch how the objects change. This photograph is a classic example of how lines play an important role in your images. Here the right-hand side of the photograph seems pretty heavily weighted. I was careful not to let the line run out of the corner, but as it stands now, it's too close to the center of the frame. Most of the weight seems on the right-hand side of the image. By moving back a little bit and changing my lens length, I was able to move the line a little further to the right. This provides a better sense of balance in the photograph. In this image of the church, I was attracted to the way the gate complemented the stonework in the back. The only problem is the large part of the fence in the center. Although it fits well in the overall scheme of the architecture, it takes over the photograph. By readjusting my positioning, I was able to remove the center post and still keep roughly the same composition. Here's a composition that speaks of lines. Notice how your eye tends to follow them. It's true we're spending time looking at other things in the photo, but for the most part, we're looking at the roof lines, the fence, and places the buildings intersect. What this composition is not about is spaces or shapes. There are very few areas that are large and homogeneous, which helps keep us focused on the lines. There are two areas, however, that can be excluded to strengthen the composition. First, the lower section of the image. It's a bright area that doesn't complement the rest of the scene. The second area is the sky. Again, unnecessary. By moving in a little closer, we can eliminate these areas, thereby strengthening the whole idea of lines in the photograph. Changing your position can also change the shape of an object. As you move to one side or another, the shape can elongate or foreshorten. This can be a helpful trick if you're wishing to strengthen one area or another. Watch as the shape of the rocks begin to elongate while I move my camera. Again, pay attention to the shape of the rocks. Although more subtle in this picture, it also changes the relationship between the objects in the frame. Watch the small plant as it relates to the background when I change back to the first shot. The same shape changing occurs in this photo of the sandstone stairs. Notice how the stairs become wider as I move my camera to the right. Our position to the stairs alters the shapes of them. In this image you can see how the shape of the bridge will change. Here I was closer to the bridge, so my vantage point is more akin to looking down at the bridge. But at this range the foliage in the top has a bit of contrast, and so it's competing for attention with the bridge. As I move back, I can see less of the top of the bridge because I am no longer looking down on it, but rather back and across it. Being further back, though, shrinks the size of the contrasty foliage at the top and creates a more singular green area. This serves to make all of the foliage one subject, or one shape. This is a far better complement to the bridge than the first shot, where the top is distracting. And too often we immediately react to a scene by pulling up our camera and shooting right away. Later, when we review the images, we think, gosh, if I'd have just moved a bit. In this shot, I was struck by the palm trees against the green exterior. Thankfully, after taking the shot, I realized there was a pole going straight up the middle of the scene. Hadn't even seen it. Also, the lower orange wall is a bit troubling. It's right in the netherworld of either being totally included or being left out entirely. So I searched around for a different vantage point and was able to find one where I could make sense of the wall and get the pole out of the way. Walking up a canyon in Zion National Park, I was impressed by the canyon walls and foliage and large boulders near the trail. The whole scene was just beautiful. For this shot, I was searching for a way to include it all and make it work. This composition, however, seems rather static, just no movement to it. I have the canyon walls, the boulder, and the foliage, but it seems too flat. This is mainly because I'm using a wide-angle lens. And I'm 6 or 8 feet away from the rock, so it is not really standing out. The foliage seems small and the canyon walls are unimpressive with this lens. Here's a time when you have to make some decisions. Decide what you like best about the scene. Then photograph that. I decided that if I came closer to the boulder, I could enlarge it and use the line going up the center to point me at the foliage in the background. This decision gives the scene more sense of depth than the previous composition. Compare this feeling of depth to the flat feeling of the first photograph. The lines in the distant hillside and the bright yellow of the trees in this foreground caught my attention in this scene. The composition's all right, but not great. I was very careful to compose the upper corners to contain the horizontal lines of the trees, but in doing so paid less attention to the yellow at the bottom. Notice how this area does not have any recognizable pattern to it? After moving around a bit, I was able to find a better grouping of trees that both fit with the upper lines and revealed an easy-to-understand shape. See the simple shape here? Now compare that shape to the more confusing outline of the first image. In addition to moving your body around, you should always consider smaller adjustments as well. Here, the small movement of raising my tripod head significantly changes the feel of the scene. In this first image, my camera height is just below the far hedgerow. As I raise my tripod a little, you begin to see the lawn in between the hedgerows. This adds some depth to the scene. This change of inches can really alter the look and feel of your imagery. Look again at how the scene changes, seems to flatten. Of course, there's no right or wrong to this, but it's important that you consider all the possibilities before you snap the shutter. Another similar example of how raising or lowering your camera height can make a huge difference. Unsightly car roofs break up the appeal of this historic building, but by lowering my camera height just a bit, they simply disappear. Look what else disappears, though. The stairs and the fence are gone as well. A fair trade-off in this scenario, but again, we should always pay close attention to how our positioning alters the relationship between the objects in our scene. If one photograph is good, then more's better. Keep exploring. Typically, the moment we see a photographic opportunity, we take it. This is an important aspect of many types of photography, such as photojournalism. The right moment is key to this type of imagery. It's the most important factor of the image. Wildlife, portraiture, and sports, they're all the same way. The look in someone's eyes or the expression on their face, that is the composition. That's the most important thing. The moment of action may not happen again, so it's best to take advantage of it immediately. If the moment is not fleeting, however, you're better served to take your time. Explore your options. Try to understand what it is you're really attracted to in the scene. Sometimes you may not know at first, and as you continue to set up shots, New ideas will arise. I went through a dozen different compositions before I decided that this is what I was looking for from the bridge. When you're first struck by a scene, try to ask yourself, what is it that you like best about it? Is it the moment? Then you better shoot quick. If not, and things are likely to stay the same, take your time and look around. Search out all the possible viewpoints and possibilities. Here I love the reflection in the water and the way the grasses seem to frame it. I tried to get the line of the grasses to match the line of the mountain. That looked okay, but I kept searching, up and down the bank, trying to find the perfect interaction between the grasses and mountaintop. Each time I stopped, it became the same routine. Lower the camera, raise the camera, move left, move right, zoom in, zoom out, until I finally found a patch of grass I was happy with. It ended up being a slightly different shape than I had envisioned in the beginning, but it complemented the scene nicely. Here's a case of a subject catching your eye and then finding many different compositions from one scene. The gold in the water is a reflection of a nearby sandstone cliff. To see this view, I had to get very low to the ground. Much higher, and the sandstone color would disappear. And you would start to see the blue sky above the sandstone. I like this one, though, because the leaf was golden, so it played off nicely with the blue. And the gold connected the top and the bottom. Raising myself up even higher made the sandstone reflection disappear altogether. Same leaf, same water, 3 different compositions. Don't be afraid to experiment. Keep looking and keep shooting. Chances are good that you'll always find something else of interest, a different way to see it, and perhaps you'll end up finding the best shot of them all. And sometimes the very first shot you took is the best, but it's worth your time to explore and experiment. When I came across this waterfall, the first thing that captured my eye was the way it interacted with the rocks it was falling over. This image shows this a little, but I felt there was too much foreground. So I moved a little closer and zoomed in a touch. The yellow leaves at the base of the falls are still included. There's just not as many of them. This helps focus our eyes to the falls themselves. Well, as I got closer to the falls, I started noticing the spinning of the leaves in the pool. This gave me the idea of putting on a neutral density filter and trying to capture the leaves swirling around. From this particular angle, though, I was not catching the circular motion of the leaves the way I wanted to. So another shift of position and a longer shutter speed, and I finally came up with what I was looking for. This is so common to make a couple of initial photographs of what you think you like and then come up with a totally new approach. This type of thinking can be applied to all disciplines of photography. Portraiture especially benefits from multiple images of the same composition. People are generally a little stiff when they first get in front of the camera, so don't believe you'll get your best shot right off the bat. Just shoot a few frames and let them relax. As you continue shooting, you can get a feel for their comfort level and begin to see the shot forming. Don't worry that you're not getting exactly what you want right away. Keep shooting and watching them. Let them relax. Soon, just the right look or flash or smile will appear, and then you'll have it. So remember, explore all your options. Take your time. Move your feet around. Kneel down. Raise up. Shoot lots of frames, and above all, pay attention to how objects interact with each other within the frame. In the final section, we'll go over a few tips, hints, and pitfalls to bear in mind when you next pick up your camera.